Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So right now we have a bunch of protocols doing the same stuff. Let's look at lending and borrowing. So we have the undisputed leader who is Aave, and then we have protocols like Morpho and Euler. Like, why do we need to have so many different protocols? Like, what are these protocols bringing to the table, and why not just have Aave?
I'll let you answer on the lending, but I feel like the question can be replicated to any vertical, right? So just to give you an example, so the core of my answer is open innovation and competitive innovation, I want to say, and just let the best emerge. And we've seen this scenario unfold so many times. So for instance, people are and still used to be and still are very confident on Uniswap model and its efficacy. But something interesting happened this year where on Base, 90% of the concentrated liquidity volume is now processed on a DEX called Aerodrome. And it's a similar but different model, especially at the incentivization level. It simply demonstrated that the capacity to attract and retain liquidity helped them capture the vast majority of the volume on the chain, as simple as that. So it kind of filled the void that Uniswap wasn't addressing, because Uniswap is more infrastructure level. They don't want to care about incentivization, made the LP earn what they earn, and leave it that. So I think it's healthy to have this competition. It can be a bit confusing for newcomers when you see that there is 25 DEX on your chain or 20 million options. But at the end of the day, the question is more about, I guess, curation and or being prudent when you're a newcomer. The problem we tend to see is some newcomers end up, deep in the trench on that debt. That's a scenario we want to avoid. The guy that just started and is using some arcanic, obscure protocol on a chain you've never heard of. That's a scary scenario. But for the rest, I'm not worried.
Yeah, so on lending, I mean, the two probably biggest players in the market right now are obviously Aave on the one hand, which follows this like monolithic design of a protocol where it's extremely paternalistic in how it manages risk. It tells you what it thinks through its DAO and through the people who support that DAO. Like, this is what we think is the best way to do lending, and these are the interest rates you can get under that model, and that's it. If you like it, use it. If you don't like it, you don't have really any other choices on Aave. On the other hand, you have Morpho, where everything's isolated, everything's fragmented in some sense, and that's another very, very opinionated model. It lowers the efficiency of the system massively, but has several benefits that will benefit some user classes. But there's a whole spectrum of needs and wants all the way in the middle and around this topic that other people have. They just aren't being serviced in the market right now. When you look at the vertical DEXs, typically the swappers they want deep liquidity and low swap fees, and the LPs just want to make as much as they can from providing liquidity and suffer limited impermanent loss. That's it really. Like, if you can make the best model where those two things are optimized, that's it. And so whoever can capture that will win that vertical. But on lending, there's all sorts of dimensions in which people have like needs and wants. And when you lend and borrow things, you're always dependent on kind of third parties, and the whole wider ecosystem influences the security and risk model around. Some people, Bryce might want a very, very decentralized lending and borrowing product, and that inevitably comes with some efficiency losses that are unavoidable. If you want a very, very efficient model, probably the best way to do things is just to have it managed by a centralized party who's just constantly monitoring the chain and adapting the risk model just to suit your needs at any one time. They're two very extreme ends of a spectrum, and they're currently not being met. So what Euler allows you to do, it's a infrastructure project, and on top of everything else, that allows people to build products that are at both ends of the spectrum and everything in between. If you want to build a real world asset lending and borrowing protocol that has permissioning on it, to service the needs of more institutional TradFi type players, then you can build that. If you want something really deep, decentralized and immutable, you can also build that kind of product as well. So it's really about providing, over the long term, it's about providing people servicing different needs of the market and different wants, which I don't think are being met today.
I think it's because we love forking. And when people see something successful, they're like, oh, I can do that slightly better, and then we just probably code and create a clone that is having slightly different flavor. The thing is, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because different protocols would optimize for different user persona, and then you'd end up with a universe of products that are tailored to specific type of user that for whatever reason their needs cannot be met with a different protocol. And I think the more interesting part of this journey would become when we get back into the rebundling stage of the industry, because it's not just DeFi. Fintech is generally all about unbundling and rebundling. And we saw some of that with Curve, a major AMM, launching a stablecoin. Aave, a lending borrowing marketplace, launching a stablecoin. Right? So we would have like this sort of some people call them cabals, but sort of consortium of related projects that would start to consolidate the value proposition. And that's when potentially like smaller, less resource-rich projects might start struggling. But for now, it's still very much an open field. So having more projects is a net positive.